So, hey guys, TommyBryson here. My favorite type of stocks are usually, for example, dividend stocks. And it's pretty obvious, right? Because you want to be able to invest money, but you also want to be able to actually get some money back every single year. So, dividends are super important. Now, there are a few principles I'm going to teach you in this video when you're actually looking for some dividend stock. And by the way, when I first got started investing for dividends, I made a few mistakes, and today it actually worked out. But I wish I would have avoided a few things, okay? And today I make around 500 bucks on dividends per month, and that's not like a ton of money. It's not a million, but to me, that's more than enough to cover my groceries and a few other bills. So it does make a difference in my life. So whether you make, for example, an extra 100, an extra 200, that's money you're not working for and having to do anything for. So it's passive and it's good. So it's a good thing to actually build up. And one main thing I noticed is basically when you go on YouTube and look up, for example, dividend stocks, you get a lot of videos telling you, hey, these are the top stocks for 2022, 2021, 2020. And you see, for example, the same channels offering you different options all the time. But in reality, effectively, what you're trying to do when you're investing for dividends is to find a great company to put your money into, to get paid passively and not have to sell it all the time, because basically that's not good for taxes. That's not good for business. So if you're constantly changing things, then does that really mean it's really the best stock for any of those years? So my goal with this video is to give you techniques and strategies so when you actually go into these investments, you actually pick them for the long run. And by the way, I'm going to tell you exactly the way I invest my money and how much money I got paid in dividends and how the whole thing works. But I'm also going to give you principles to actually live by and invest by. So I hope this video actually helps you out a ton. And as always, guys, do me a favor and destroy the like button. And if you're new here, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to get notified, because I post videos every single day on finance and money and also passive income. Let's get started. So the very first thing is, guys, number one, when I first started investing, the very first thing I would look at is basically what is the dividend yield of this company. And that used to be a massive reason why I would buy a company or not buy it, because you kind of see, hey, this company pays me 1% dividend yield. That's not that attractive. This one's 5%. That's a lot of money. This one's 7%. I even seen companies that were upwards to 10%, and that got my attention. Now, the real thing is that dividend yield, it really doesn't matter that much. Like, here's what I really mean by this, okay? Dividend yield is, for example, what the dividend payout is when you divide that by the market price. So, for example, okay, if a company is paying you $3 per share as far as a dividend payment, and the company is listed at, for example, let's say $30, then your dividend yield is effectively going to be around 10%, which isn't bad. It's pretty good. It's pretty awesome, honestly, to get 10%. So it's basically what is the dividend payout divided by the market price. Now, this might seem pretty crazy, pretty cool, 10%, right? But what would happen if a company basically says, hey, the company goes from being at $30 per share to $20 per share, and they're still paying you the same $3. Well, divided by 20, well, that means basically effectively now you're getting paid 15%. But in reality, this dividend yield can basically be affected a lot by the market price. So if all you're looking at is the dividend yield, but the company sucks, and this happens to be that basically the company price went down, the market price went down by a lot, and now it looks like it's paying you a bigger dividend yield, but the company sucks, thus it might not even be able to pay out that dividend yield. The answer is you want to be careful. So that's just one variable. The dividend yield is just a ratio between the actual dividend payment and also relating to the market price. So don't go looking for a company and say, well, the dividend yield is so high on this one. No, that's not the only thing. Why is it this high? Okay, what is actually up with the company? Why is it paying so much money when everyone else is paying a lot less? So look out for that when you're actually going to be investing into dividend companies. Number two is earnings are basically everything. You know, this is what I mean by this, okay? A company can be super popular, can be respected, it can be well known, it can have one of the biggest brands, but in reality, if it doesn't earn a good amount of money or any money, then it doesn't really matter, and it probably will not be around for a very long time. Now, you have companies out there that basically they pay out, for example, a good, decent dividend, and you might be like, wow, this is a great company. 5% is awesome. But in reality, you have to kind of think about, well, what percentage of the earnings are they actually paying out? Because remember, okay, a dividend is just, for example, the company paying out some of the earnings to you, the owner. Because whenever you buy a stock, don't forget, you are now an owner. The management, those people in the company, they work for you. Don't go in there and say I'm the boss, obviously, because there are a multitude of bosses, right? But the idea is they actually work for you. So whenever the company makes money, they pay out some of that money to you guys via a dividend. Some companies don't pay that out. They use that money for other stuff. I'll talk about that later on in the video. But overall, it's very important that you know what, for example, EPS is. And that's basically earnings per share. And what this means is very simple. It's the ratio between what the net income of the company actually is divided by how many shares there actually are outstanding. That sounds complicated, but it's very simple, okay? If me and you have a company and our company made $10 and there are two partners, two shares overall, me and you, what does that mean? $10 divided by 2, effectively, each of our shares owns $5, meaning you earn $5, that one share earns $5, the other share earns $5. Why is it important how much money each share actually makes? Because the dividend is given out per share also. So basically meaning that if the company earns per share around, let's say, $2 per share is actually earning, which can be a lot of money depending on what it actually is and how many shares are actually outstanding. Well, if you guys earn $2 per share and you're paying out, for example, $3 per share, that doesn't look good. Because if you earn $2 and you're paying $3, how long are you going to be able to sustain that? I'll give you an example, guys, okay? There are companies out there that for a very long time have a history of paying out consistent dividends and also raising the dividend every single year, like Procter & Gamble and other companies out there. Also like Lowe's. Now, the idea is that this becomes such a big proponent when it comes to the actual business and the overall price of the stock that if they were to skip a year or say we can't pay the dividend or we're actually not going to increase it, that might not look so great for investors and the price might actually plummet, which is not going to be a good thing. So they're willing to go ahead and say, hey, we're going to pay out more money than we made just for the sake of keeping consistency and to keep shareholders' confidence actually up. And they do this by dipping into the cash or the reserves or the surplus of the company and basically paying that out during that year to basically say, hey, everything's fine, we're paying this stuff out. But always remember, the percentage of the payout is very important. Because if we're making $1 and you're paying out, for example, $1.75, there's a very small margin in there to say, hey, if something goes wrong and the company earns a lot less money for 5-10 years consistently, how are you going to be able to pay this out? The answer is it won't be able to pay that out for a long time, basically. Now, number 3, consistent dividend increases, okay? This is very important. Whenever you look at a company and you see a high, a decent, a fair dividend, you also want to check, for example, its record. How long has this dividend been consistent? How long have they been paying this amount of money? You got to remember, guys, okay? Managers, although they work for you, they're people. And managers can be very deceiving, and they might just be in the game to say, hey, we want the share price to go all the way, so let's make this target and say, let's increase the dividends. Let's basically make the dividend very attractive to get, for example, newer investors in, because by the way, relatively why the higher the dividends, most likely the higher the share price is going to be usually. Kind of how it works, okay, because it attracts a lot of people. So managers might use that to actually trick people to actually invest into a terrible company. But overall, if you look at a company and you see that, hey, they pay out $3, they have a 7% dividend yield, which is super impressive, super awesome. But you see a 10-year dividend yield structure and you say, hey, they missed like 4 payments in the past 10 years, or they went from paying $1 to paying like 80 cents to paying 60 cents to paying $1, and it's not really consistent. That is not a good sign. So look for consistency. And when you say, I want to see consistency in the dividends, what you're really saying is, I want to see consistent earnings. Because if a company has consistent earnings, meaning it makes money consistently, it can also pay out money consistently. Because remember, what basically pays the dividend is the earnings, is the percentage of the earnings, okay? So Earnings are super important, and look for consistency when it comes to earnings, okay? Now, number 4, guys, okay? Sometimes below average dividends are actually not such a bad thing. And you shouldn't see, for example, a low dividend yield and say, like, I'm not going to invest in there. That's it. I'm done. No, you should look at the whole picture. Because, for example, a company can choose to say, hey, we're only going to pay out, for example, like 20% or 30% of our earnings. By the way, Apple does this, right? Apple pays out, I think, like 68 cents, which is like, I don't know, like 28% of what they actually make. And the rest of the money, they basically retain it. But over time, by you investing into Apple, you got richer because the price of Apple went up. And Apple also has a ton of cash, like I think over like $60 billion in like cash equivalents and also cash overall. A ton of money. Like if they did a special dividend, that would be like $2,000 per share, which is kind of crazy to think about, but it is amazing. Apple is a great company, but that's what I mean, okay? You can have a company with a low yield and be like, wow, this is still a good, great investment, because a lot of the money, they're using it to grow the business. They're using it to increase earnings. And by the way, growing the business without increasing earnings isn't really a substitute, okay? You can have a company, for example, that's using all the money that they should have paid you to grow the business, make it bigger, but if it's not actually making them more money, which means it's not making you more money, then what's the point of doing it? Growth doesn't equal to, for example, money in your pocket overall, or more earnings or higher profits whatsoever, so keep that in mind. But sometimes a company can say, hey, we're going to grab these dividends and say, hey, we're going to keep a percentage of it. We're going to put money into research and development to make the company better, improve it, make better products, make more money with better margins. We're going to use this money to basically buy back shares, to basically increase your level of ownership, which is actually a good thing, right? You make more money this way too, because usually the share price also goes up. So there's a lot of things to look at and not just a dividend. So don't just be saying like, hey, the dividend yield is not that high, so I'm not going to invest into it. It's not the only thing you should look at when it comes to a company. Now, however, you do have to be careful of a company that doesn't pay a dividend, and this is the last thing, guys, here, that doesn't pay a dividend and uses the idea of we want to grow, we want to do this, we want to do that as an excuse for not paying it out. Remember, okay? When you have a company, what do you have? You have leadership, you have managers, you have products, you have customers, you have employees. You have a lot of factors here, right? You also have competition. You have all these qualitative and quantitative factors here, but overall what you have is money and profits, okay? And let's say, for example, you have a company like Tesla, which doesn't pay out a dividends, okay? Now, as long as Tesla keeps growing and making more money, and if you put in $1, you get $1.20 back or $1.10 back, it's still effective. It's still a good investment in a sense, right? But if you put $1 into Tesla and they say, we're going to grow this company, we're going to put it into a factory that's going to basically burn money, and then this and that, and then your dollar turns into 80 cents, it doesn't really make sense. If they withhold dividends and they're basically building up a stockpile of cash and they use that money to invest into terrible investments, then that's not a good thing either. But Tommy, companies that invest money, these are professionals. No, these are managers, okay? And a lot of these managers, they don't know how to allocate capital in a sense. So you can have a company, I think it was like Zappos. Zappos was a shoe online company, and they made a whole bunch of terrible acquisitions when they were actually on back in the day. So you got to look out for this when it comes to a company and actually figure this out, because if they're not paying you, for example, a good amount of money in dividends, and then you look at, for example, the cash flow statement and you see you're basically wasting all this money, we're actually not growing whatsoever. You look at the balance sheet, the income statement, there's no growth here, we're not earning more money, then what's the point here? Then you might want to trade for a competitor stock or something like that, okay? So that's the idea, guys. Overall, when it comes to dividends, you want to look at the whole company overall. And one of the most important aspects is just basically earnings. Now, for me personally, right now, I'm not buying individual companies because there's a lot of things I need to learn first. But what I am buying is, for example, ETFs. And I told you guys I would tell you exactly how much money I make in dividends and also what I actually invest into. And overall, as you guys know, right now it is 2022. August 9th, and the stock market is still down from what it used to be. So the portfolio I actually have is still down, but I'm still up overall because I've been dollar cost averaging. And what that means is basically I'm buying every month, and then that way I basically lower my cost or whatever, okay? Now overall, I have it. Well, that's not what it means. Let me really clarify. Dollar cost average basically means I buy the same amount of securities every month. And what happens is if I do that every month, it's going to average out the price. All right. That's where I really want to explain that. So overall, I have around $260,000 in investments. My cost basis was around $228,000. So I'm still up about 13% or so. But overall, guys, my portfolio between this one and my retirement account, which I actually have, it's around like $300,000 right now at this current market value. And I get paid, I think, let me just have these numbers on hand so I actually can tell you exactly what it is. And I get paid around, as you can see here, at this current rate, around 2.25% in dividends. That's not there. Let me put that right there. That's right here, 2.25% in dividends, as you can see right there. So that basically means $300,000 multiplied. Well, it's actually maybe even more because when I bought it was actually at a lower price. And the dividend yield, again, is based on the market price, okay? So overall, you're looking at $300,000 multiplied by 0.0225. You're looking at around $6,750 divided by 12. I'm making somewhere around $562.50, okay? That's the idea. Now, these investments, if you want to copy the exact way I invest my money, which is basically into ETFs, the idea is I invest into 5 different ETFs. And in here, you have, for example, the S&P 500, you have the small cap market, you have the developed market, you also have the real estate market, and then you also have the emerging market. Now, I have a link down below to M1 Finance, and if you want to copy the exact way I invest, the answer is down below. Click that link, start investing the way I invest. But if you're going to be picking stocks and you want to look at different things, the answer is dividend is not the only thing to look at. And that's all I'm trying to say. Okay, guys? Thanks for watching. If you made it all the way here, type in how much money do you want to make in dividends, okay? I really want to know. So type in, for example, if it's $100, into $200, and just tell me what your goal is, okay? So for me, my first goal was just make enough in dividends to cover my haircut, which at the time was like 25 bucks or 20 bucks, okay? So comment down below, what is the first bill you want dividends to replace for you? Peace out. Long-term team out. Like, subscribe, hit the bell so you're notified. Up here, another video. Over here is my face. Click subscribe. And as always, long-term team officially out.